Have you ever felt like a shadow in your own family? Always sacrificing, always silent, and then one day you ask yourself, when will they ever acknowledge me? If one day you have the chance to stand up, to regain your self-respect, would you dare to do it, even if it means paying the price of loneliness? I'm Noella Carter, 35, and I'm the CEO of a clean energy technology company in Austin, Texas. I don't use social media, I don't flaunt my life, and frankly, I'm pretty much a ghost to most people outside of work. Yesterday, I was in a conference room signing a multi-million-dollar deal with investors who kept calling me a visionary. My assistant handed me a cup of black unsweetened coffee, as usual, and I nodded, barely looking up from the numbers. Life is great, right? But when I reached across the room and saw my vice president smiling at a photo of his kids on his desk, I felt a deep ache that I couldn't shake. My parents don't even know what I've built. They don't know I'm here running this show because I stopped telling them at any point years ago. I'm the daughter they forgot. Growing up, my mom always favored my younger sister Amelia over me. I remember my 10th birthday. She bought me a $5 grocery store cake that was half melted and told me to stop whining when I asked why there were no candles. Amelia's 10th birthday? An outdoor party with streamers, a bounce house, and a custom cake shaped like a fucking unicorn. I stood there in my old faded jeans holding a paper plate while my mom fussed over Amelia's new dress. By the time she was 12, things had gotten worse. Amelia had bought this beautiful turquoise dress for her school dance. Mom drove her to 3 stores to find it. Me, I begged for a new dress because mine tore at the thigh, and Mom yelled, "You're old enough to figure it out." So I did. I sewed it back together with mismatched black thread, and I wore it anyway, feeling like trash next to Amelia's glitter. The tipping point came when I was 18. I got into MIT, the dream I'd scribbled down in my notebook since I was 14. I ran home with my acceptance letter, shaking, thinking they'd see me for a second. Dad looked at it, shrugged, and said, "We can't afford it." Mom chimed in, "Public schools are cheaper. Noelle, get closer, we're not rich." I protested. God, I protested, but they discouraged me. Family first, they said, so I gave up, enrolled in the local college, and watched my future slip away. Then, 2 years later, I saw a bank statement that Dad had left on the counter. They had drained my college savings, every penny I'd saved from summer jobs, to send Amelia to Australia for her dream program. Mom had the nerve to say, "Amelia has potential. You're practical, Noelle." Practical. That word burned into me. I packed a bag that night, moved out, and swore I'd never rely on them again. After that, I was on my own. No loans, no help, just me, late nights, and a laptop. I'd built my career from scratch, and yes, I was proud of it. For 3 years, every month, I transferred them $9,000. Automatic transfers, no IOUs. They thought it was Amelia's money because I never told them otherwise. One time I almost spilled it. Mom called asking about me, and I started to say, "I just closed a big deal," but she cut me off. "Amelia got a raise," she bragged. "You should take notes from her." I swallowed my words, hung up, and kept quiet. They didn't deserve to know who I was now. But last week, when Mom's birthday was coming up, I softened. Maybe it was the late night whiskey, or maybe I just missed the idea of a family. I called her thinking I was going to fix something, maybe bring a gift. "Hey, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "What are you doing for your birthday?" She didn't even pause. "Oh, I shouldn't have come," she said, her voice icy. "Amelia's bringing her boyfriend home. He's nice, works for a big company. I don't want you to, well, embarrass me." I heard Amelia in the background giggling. God, can you imagine if she showed up? How embarrassing. My chest tightened, but I didn't protest. "Okay," I said firmly. "Have a good day, Mom." I hung up. After I hung up with my mom, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in my dark office, the Austin skyline glowing through the windows, and opened my banking app. 3 years of automatic payments, $9,000 a month on the first of every month, stared at me. My finger hovered over the cancel button for about 10 seconds before I pressed it. Done. No warning, no explanation. Would they call her first, maybe because they thought those were Amelia's payments? I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, and took a slow sip of my whiskey. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh, cutting them off so coldly. But then I remembered my mom's voice. "Don't come. You'll embarrass me." No, they deserved it. I closed my laptop, locked the office door, and went back to my empty apartment, waiting for the chaos to come. It didn't take long. Mom's birthday was 3 days later, and by 8 p.m. that night, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Missed calls from Dad, texts from Mom, Noelle, pick up, it's urgent. And then a video call from Aunt Grace, the only family member I still spoke to. I mostly ignored it, but something told me to answer. When I did, the screen lit up with pure chaos. The living room was dark, lit only by a flickering light. Guess the electricity had gone out mid-party. Mom yelled at Dad, "I told you to pay the damn bill," while Dad fumbled with a flashlight, muttering, "It's not my fault." Amelia sat in the corner, mascara running down her face, yelling at someone off screen, "This is your fault! Fix it!" Guests gathered around, embarrassed. A guy in a cheap suit whispered to his wife, "I think they have money. This is a dump." I could hear the plates clanking, ice melting in the warm drinks. No water, no air conditioning, just a hot, miserable mess. Grace turned the camera to her face, her eyes pleading. "Noelle, honey, everything's falling apart. Please, can you help?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched, letting the scene sink in. The house I'd held together for years was falling apart, and they didn't know why. Then the camera rolled again, and there he was. Ethan, Amelia's boyfriend, walking into the frame. He was tall, polished, wearing a button-down shirt as if he just walked out of a board meeting. He squinted at the screen, stiff, and gaped. "Boss?" he stuttered, his hand shaking as if he were holding a beer mug. The room fell silent. Mom whirled around, Dad dropped the flashlight, and Amelia's sobs were interrupted mid-sentence. Someone, probably a cousin, mumbled, "Wait, did he just call Noelle boss?" Another voice chimed in, louder. "Isn't she like the CEO of that clean energy company? Ethan works there, right?" I watched it all unfold in real time. Ethan's face was red, his eyes glancing at Amelia as if he'd stepped on a landmine. She lunged forward, grabbing his arm, hissing, "Shut up, Ethan." But he pushed her away, still staring at me through the screen. She's my boss," he said, his voice hoarse, like top boss. Amelia let out a strangled cry, half scream, half gasp, and stumbled back. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide and glazed, while Dad just stood there, blinking as if he'd been slapped. The guests began to whisper, phones were pulled out. Someone must have been Googling me. Aunt Grace zoomed in on her face again, whispering, "Noelle, they don't know. No one does." I didn't say a word. I just hit the end call button and the screen went black. I sat there for a long time after that, the silence in my apartment heavier than ever. My phone kept flashing, my text from Aunt Grace. "My mom is crying her eyes out. She keeps asking why I never told them." I didn't answer. What was there to say? They'd spent years treating me like a footnote, relying on Amelia's success while I kept them out of the shadows. Now the mask was off and they were choking on it. I poured another drink, skimming through work emails to distract myself. It wasn't joy, it was relief. A week after Mom's birthday, my doorbell rang. I was in my condo, overlooking the city. I'd just gotten back from a late meeting, still in my coat, my heels. When I checked the security camera, there they were, Mom, Dad, and Amelia, standing at my door like a nightmare. Mom's hair was disheveled, Dad's shirt was wrinkled, and Amelia looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I rang them in, not because I wanted to, but because I knew they'd keep coming back if I didn't confront them. The elevator dinged and they shuffled into my living room, their eyes wandering over the marble counters, the art on the walls, the life I'd built without them. Mom spoke first, her voice sweet in a way that gave me goosebumps. "Noelle, honey," she said, clasping her hands, "we're sorry about last night. You know how hard it is for us. If you could help, even if it was just $5,000 a month, we'd be so grateful. You're my daughter, after all." Dad nodded, his eyes lingering on my stainless steel refrigerator as if he were mentally assessing it. I leaned against the counter across my arms and let the silence drag on. They fidgeted, Mom twirling her fingers, Dad shifting his weight, Amelia staring at the floor. Finally, I tilted my head and asked, "What's Amelia's contribution?" Mom blinked, caught off guard, and began to rattle off, "Oh, she's struggling, honey. She doesn't have a job right now, and she's been sick, stressed, you know." Amelia kept her head down, but I saw her eyes flick up, a sharp, quick glance that suggested she wasn't as fragile as people said. Dad interjected, "Yeah, she was tough. We all were." I raised an eyebrow. "How tough?" Mom's tone changed, a little desperate now. "Look, we didn't mean to push you away. We thought it was best for you to keep you close. Don't take it personally. Best for me." The words hung there, thin and fake, and I almost laughed. I straightened up, walked to the window, and turned to face them. "Here's the deal," I said, my voice even. "I'll help, but I want the house. Transfer the title to me, and you can live there rent-free as long as you behave." "That's it!" The room exploded. Mom's face turned red, and she screamed, "You're ungrateful! After all we've done?" Dad slammed his hand down on my coffee table, shaking the glass coaster. "I raised you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us?" Amelia finally shouted, her voice shrill. "You're gonna take our house to get back at us, aren't you? You're so mean." I didn't flinch. I'd expected this, even considered it. They weren't remorseful. They'd been backed into a corner. I watched Mom pacing, Dad glaring, and Amelia clenching her fists, and I felt nothing but calm. "You took my future away," I said, cutting through their clamor. My voice was even and cold, as if I were stating a fact at a board meeting. "You sold my dream to prop it up, and I gave up. Now I just buy back what's mine." Mom stopped pacing, opened her mouth, then closed it. Dad's face twisted, and he growled, "We never sold anything." I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "You did. Remember when Amelia's tuition was due and you said I was useless for not helping? I sent you thousands of dollars then, Dad. Thousands you thought were hers." He froze, his anger flaring into confusion. Mom clutched her purse, stammering, "That's not it! We don't know." I cut her off. "You don't care. You chose her every time, and I stopped waiting for you to see me. This isn't revenge. This is business." Amelia lunged forward, tears streaming down her face. "You're a liar. You've always hated me." I looked her straight in the eye, unwavering. "I don't hate you, Amelia. I just don't owe you." She stepped back as if I'd slapped her, and Mom grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Noelle, please," Mom pleaded, her voice breaking. "We're family. Don't do this." I walked to the door, opened it, and gestured for them to leave. "Sign the papers or figure it out. I'm done." Dad stormed past me, muttering, "I'm not your daughter." Mom sobbed as she walked away. "You're going to regret this." Amelia lingered, glaring, then spat. "You're a cold bitch, Noelle." I closed the door behind them, the lock clicking, and stood there listening to their footsteps fade away. My apartment was quiet again, and for the first time in years, I felt their weight lift. Just a little. 3 months after they left my apartment, the legal hoops were spinning. I hired a lawyer, Mark, who met me at his downtown office. I handed him a stack of bank records, proof of every payment I'd ever made, and said, "They can't keep it." He flipped through the pages, nodded, and said, "This should be easy." It was true, the house was still in their name, but with no mortgage payments since I'd cut them off, and no response to my offers to sign or leave. Foreclosure was a straight shot. The eviction notice arrived in their mailbox on a rainy Monday. I pictured Mom ripping it open, Dad cursing over his morning beer. Mark called me 3 weeks later, mid-afternoon, as I was grabbing a sandwich from a food truck near work. "Here you go," he said. "They're out. The contract's been assigned." I remember him hanging up, taking a bite of the turkey baster, staring at the gray sky. No rush of victory, just a dull, steady relief. Aunt Grace called that night, her voice shaking as if she'd been crying too. "Noelle, it's bad," she said. "Your mom's been at my house since the sheriff showed up. She's sleeping on my pull-out bed, saying she's going to die on the streets. Dad's holed up in a motel, drinking himself into a coma." I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, chopping carrots for a stir-fry I barely ate. "What about Amelia?" I asked. Grace was sobbing. "She ran off with Ethan after the birthday party, but they broke up last week. He's had enough of her tantrums. Says she blames him for ruining her life. Now she's sleeping on the couch with an old college friend, no money, no plans." I said, "They can sign the papers, Grace." I gave them a way out. She didn't object, just whispered, "I know," before the line went dead. The fallout spread like wildfire. My phone buzzed with a text from Jen, a high school friend I hadn't seen in years. "Holy shit, your mom's live on social media, crying about how you stole their house. The comments are cruel. Half pity her." I didn't look. Instead, I got a text from Mrs. Dawson, our old neighbor. "I saw the moving truck yesterday," she wrote. "Your dad was yelling at the movers, smashing a lamp in the driveway. Your mom was just sitting on the curb, crying. Never thought I'd see them like this." I pictured it. Dad's red face, Mom's mascara-stained cheeks, the gaping cul-de-sac. Grace called back a few days later, updating me. "They're arguing. Dad says Mom loves Amelia too much. Mom screams that Dad is a cowardly drunk. This is a war zone." I poured a glass of wine, stared at the ruby liquid, and thought, they created this mess, not my fire to put out. I didn't waste time with the house. The following Monday, I called a realtor, Lisa, a bright blonde who showed up in a coat and heels, talking excitedly about great things and market trends. We walked around the property together, my first time in years. The lawn was overgrown, the paint was peeling, and there was probably a crack window from Dad's temper. Inside, they'd left a stained couch and a broken TV. Lisa didn't flinch, just took notes. Cash buyers will buy it, she said. I nodded, told her to list it, and left without looking back. It sold in 8 days from a couple of investors who were planning to buy it. The closing was easy. I signed at my desk, and the money was in my account by noon. I didn't touch it. That night, I sat on my balcony with a notepad, sketching out a scholarship. I wired the entire amount to a nonprofit I trusted, emailed them the details, and received a response the next day. But they couldn't let it go. A week later, my mother texted me, short and sour, "You'll regret it, no daughter does." I was in a coffee shop when it appeared. I read it twice, deleted it, and took a sip of my drink. Amelia called the next night, 8 p.m., just as I was relaxing with a book. I answered, bracing myself for an argument, but she broke down. "You're so mean, Noelle," she stuttered, her voice hoarse from tears or alcohol, maybe both. "You took our house, our life, everything. I have nothing for you." Her sobs echoed, loud and hoarse, followed by a muffled crash as if she'd dropped something. "I hate you," she wailed before the call was cut off. I put the phone down, walked to the window, and looked out at the noisy city below. Her hatred didn't last long. It was fleeting, like the smoke I stopped breathing in. Life was getting easier. I woke up a month later, early, before my alarm went off, and realized I hadn't dreamed of my mother's voice or Amelia's eyes in weeks. My apartment felt more like a home than a fortress. I'd even bought a plant, a stubborn little cactus I'd named Spike, and set it on the windowsill, watering it from a coffee mug. Work was busy too. My company had won a big government contract for solar power, and I spent my days in meetings, crunching numbers, shaking the hands of suits who called me ma'am without a trace of irony. The scholarship fund, Second Shot, had sent me its first report. 3 girls had been sponsored, 2 in engineering, 1 in medicine. I met one of them, Sarah, at a quiet diner on I-35. She was 19, full of nervous energy and chip nail polish, and over chips she told me about how her dad had sold her laptop to buy her brother a car. "I thought I was going to be stuck forever," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I'm in UT now." I saw my old self in her, hungry, ignored, and smiled, real and slow. "You can do this," I told her. Driving home, I turned up the radio and felt something soft settle in my chest. My family. But they were ghosts now. Aunt Grace texted me last week. "Your parents moved north, rented a cheap apartment in Waco. They don't talk about you anymore." I was sitting at my desk working on a presentation when I read it. No pain, no guilt, just a nod, as I expected. "They're quieter these days," Grace added, tired. "Dad's sober, Mom's working part-time at the grocery store." I pictured them in a cramped apartment, Mom in a polyester vest, Dad staring at a muted TV, and it didn't faze me. Amelia darkened too. My high school friend Jen texted me a rumor. "Heard she's in Dallas waitressing, dyeing her hair black like she's in hiding." I didn't dig any deeper. They were still out there, piecing together what was left, but they weren't pulling me in anymore. I wasn't their lifeline, their punching bag, their shadow. I was just Noelle, and that was enough. Looking back, I've reflected on what all this has taught me. I don't forgive them. Not in the way people say in Hallmark cards. Mom's coldness, Dad's shrugs, Amelia's self-righteousness. Those were scars, not open wounds, and I was okay with that. The hatred was gone too. It had burned somewhere between the eviction and the sale. What I'd done, taking over the house, cutting ties, wasn't out of jealousy. It was justice. My way of balancing the scales after years of being the one on the receiving end. I'd written a letter to my 18-year-old self one night, sprawled on the couch with a pen and a beer. "Hey kid," I'd scrawled, "they'll try to break you, but you'll build something bigger. Don't let anyone take that away from you again." I folded it up, put it in a drawer, and slept better than I'd slept in years. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was a promise I'd kept, and it was better than they'd ever given me. The story doesn't end with a bow, but it does have a beat. A few days ago, Ethan, my employee Amelia's ex, dropped a message into my inbox. I was in the office, late, the horizon glowing orange outside my window. His email was brief, awkward, boss. "I'm sorry about the other night. Didn't mean to blow things up. You're still the best leader I've ever worked for." I read it twice, tapping my fingers against my desk. He was a good kid, smart, loyal, stuck in my clique, and I knew he carried that guilt like a backpack. I didn't reply, just smiled and closed my laptop. Let him sweat, that was fine. I grabbed my jacket, zipped it up, and stepped outside. The air was fresh, the kind that wakes you up. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching Austin horns honking, lights flashing, life moving. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and walked home under a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. I'm still in Austin, still running the company, and last weekend I drove to Lake Travis with just me, a thermos of coffee, and a folding chair. I sat by the water, watched kayakers skim the waves, and didn't check my phone for 3 hours. It wasn't a huge change. I didn't suddenly enjoy yoga or Instagramming sunsets, but I stopped rushing every minute, and that was refreshing. Work was steady too. My team was working on a new solar prototype, and I was in the lab more, rolling up my sleeves, tinkering with panels alongside engineers half my age. They call me Carter now, not ma'am, and I like it. Then yesterday, out of the blue, Grace showed up. I was in my apartment, and the doorbell rang. "It's you," she said, her voice strained. She walked in, her gray hair tied back, holding a grocery bag that clinked against the glass. "Bringing you jam," she said, placing it on my kitchen counter. 3 jars of homemade jam, the label scrawled in her shaky handwriting. We sat on my couch, awkwardly at first, sipping the tea I made to fill the silence. "I didn't come here to beg," she began, staring into her cup. "Your parents are surviving, barely surviving. I just wanted to see you." I nodded, waiting. She took a breath. "Dad has a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom works the cash register. They don't fight much anymore. Amelia's in Dallas, changing jobs. She calls me every now and then, mostly to vent." That night, I thought about what was next, not for them, but for me. I'm not a CEO or a family outcast. I'm just Noelle. I have the company. I can hide until the noise comes. It's my victory, and I'm going to hold on to it. Dear friend, if you are still here and have heard the last lines, I want to ask you something from the bottom of my heart. If you have always been a sacrificial person in a family that does not see you until you stand up to reclaim your value, do you feel guilty, or is that the moment you realize forgiveness is not forgetting, but stopping letting the past control the present? I know many uncles, aunts, brothers, and sisters have experienced the feeling of being looked down upon, taken advantage of, then quietly withdrawing so as not to bother their loved ones. Please share your story in the comments section, because who knows, your words are the light for someone who is still silently suffering.